and welcome back to another episode of the Portsmouth Comic Con Podcast. Today I am joined by guests that will be coming along in just a few short weeks on the 3rd and 4th of May. Neill Cameron, welcome to the show, sir.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's going to be a fun chat. It's always fun when I get to speak with creators and people that are coming to the con, because when I'm at the event, I don't like to interrupt too much because sometimes you're always off being so busy, especially on Artist Alley, one of my favourite places to be where the magic is literally happening. So in these situations, it's fun for me because I get to be greedy and get a bit more time with you, which is always nice. But if you can, let's share a bit of an origin/introduction story about yourself, please.
Sure. My name is Neill Cameron. I'm a comics writer and artist. I mostly make comics for younger readers, for sort of kids roughly 7 to 12, but with a lot of sort of wiggle room on either side of that. For a long time, I've worked for a comic called The Phoenix, which is a weekly comic for children, and then the stories we make sort of through there get collected together as a series of graphic novels. The one I've most been working on for a long time is called Mega Robo Bros, which is about robots, and it's kind of a coming of age story about robots. And now I'm doing a new series which is going to be coming out this year. The first book of which is going to be coming out this year, called Donut Squad, which you can probably guess from the name what that's about.
What's not to love a squad about donuts, though? I've seen some of the artwork, and I mean, I've got to say, I'm a big fan of the donuts, so I'm hoping with this one there's going to be lots of tasty merch to come along with that as well.
Oh, fingers crossed, eh?
So where did life begin for you when it came to the art of comic creating?
It began very early, I think. I was a big comics reader as a kid, and it just sort of never occurred to me that you wouldn't draw them as well, if you see what I mean. Like you'd read your comics when you were a kid, and then you'd have a week to wait until you found out what happened next to the Transformers, and so you would draw your own Transformers story in the meantime to sort of because it was fun to draw Transformers. I don't know.
So yeah, I mean, for us, I say, especially in the UK, comics back when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't always that easy to find them. I mean, I was a proud member of the Beano Club. I've still got my membership card and my badges, and I know the secret handshakes, but it wasn't guaranteed that we would get comics, that's for sure. So where did you get yours from, and what were your go-to pulls every week or fortnight, as it may be?
Well, so like I'm old enough that when I was sort of a kid, there were still quite a lot around in newsagents still, and they were still quite cheap and sort of it's quite a normal thing to just buy, 1 or 2 or 3, comics a week because you could with your pocket money, really. It started with the Beano. I also was a member of the fan club, had the Nasher badge with the googly
Fantastic.
eyes. And then, but I think what cemented it was when I discovered the Marvel UK Transformers comic one day in the newsagent. I think I grew up next door to a newsagent, and so I think maybe that might have formed is quite formative to my personality. It's just like, I thought it was the coolest place in the world because it was next door to my house, but they had comics in, so I
Perfect place.
spent a lot of time. Yeah, and so Transformers was a comic, but it was like dramatic and exciting, and it had awesome robots that turned into cars and shot lasers and punched each other, and but also I think crucially, I don't know if you've read any of Transformers, but it was the American sort of Marvel comics of the Transformers being reprinted for a UK audience, but because it was weekly, they burned through the material too quickly, and so they started commissioning UK creators to do sort of original material, which the first one of which was John Ridgway drew it. I remember that, and I think Steve Moore wrote it. And it was set in Britain. It was set like in a little English village where sort of an ancient transformer wakes up beneath the village. And it was very weird and sort of folkloric. And like it was like an episode of Doctor Who in a way, but it had Transformers in. And it was just the most mind-blowing thing I'd ever read. And the art was, to my young eyes, just so much better than anything I'd seen in comics before. Like John Ridgway is incredible. And that was probably the first point I started noticing the names, and like, People drew this. This guy is better than this other guy. I really like this art. And so I started thinking of artists as like a job. Some human being made this, therefore that's someone's job. Therefore, maybe that could be a job I could do, it's sort of 8-year-old logic.
It worked.
Yeah.
That logic worked, Neill, which is a fantastic thing.
It took a while, but I got there in the end. What I was going to say, though, is the key thing about the Transformers is you had these amazing sort of action-packed adventure stories, but then you also had a little 4-panel gag strip on like the letters page, which were by Lou Stringer, who's a sort of, I have learned since, over the decades since, is an absolute legend in British comics and has worked for all kinds of publishers and done all sorts of amazing stuff. But it was seeing that comics could be this one thing, but could also be this other thing, was really sort of, I think, instructive and formative for me as a kid. And Lou's comics were the ones that you might have a go at drawing, like, you know what I mean? Like, because it's a sort of cartoony, very child-friendly style, and it made you sort of encourage you to have a go at drawing your own version, which is a really important function of comics for that sort of young readership, I think. Whereas I couldn't draw like John Ridgway. Who can,
I mean, you found that element with, well, I could replicate that or create that in my own style. Let's start doodling. Let's start making artwork. Similar to sort of, I can remember getting lost in Mad comics. When I went to America for the first time, I was excited to see my first ever Mad comic in the wild. Yeah. And I ended up buying loads of them because the fact, as you said, if you look closer, there's more little gags on each page. There's something to, with my mind, I like seeing lots of things at once. And with the comic like Mad, and you would get those little pullouts or the jokes within a joke thing, whether it be a flip book in the bottom corner. But that style as well, not primitive as such, but it's artwork that isn't the full page, but it's something fun to look at that grabs your attention. And that's what I have seen with your artwork. It's fun and it grabs your attention. So I can see where that evolved into your. So where did sort of life evolve? You're a comic fan. You've started nipping next door, getting the comics, which is a fantastic commute. I mean, it's risky, expensive, doing extra jobs around the house to get more pocket comic book money. I like
literally,
that. But
yeah.
How did that evolve to that next stage of turning this into a possible career?
Well, it's quite a long and winding road, I suppose. But the sort of one of the big steps would be sort of going from just drawing things sort of for my own and my little brother's amusement to taking the big step would be sort of around about sort of teenage years, like making more copies on a photocopier of a comic I'd made and getting into like small press comics, as we called it then, and it was sort of felt like in hindsight, felt like quite a small scene, but to me that was a huge step, like letting strangers read comics I'd drawn, you know what I mean? Letting sort of, I cannot overstate how small a scale, like you'd put an ad in the back of Comics International magazine, and the other 7 people in the country who were interested in small press comics would send a self-stamped addressed envelope to you and maybe a postal order for £1.50 or something, and you would then send back in the post your comic that you'd made. It's charmingly sort of lo-fi and low tech, low ambition in hindsight, but it felt like such a huge thing, as a teenager, to be like, people I've never met are reading my comic. That's incredible. I made a sale. It's such a sort of empowering thing, I suppose. And you sort of get some community that way because you all send each other letters and you all say, "Oh, I really like this comic that you made," and I really and you start drawing strips for each other's comics and finding collaborators that way, and through that you suddenly start to, in some way, see yourself as a creator. I don't think I had any illusions about being particularly good, but you are making comics and you're drawing them, and people are asking you to write their comics and stuff. So you do start to think of yourself as,
it's happening. I work in comics now. The dream is here, which is fantastic. So going back when you sort of made, as you say, your first sale, as it were, can you remember thinking, I'm going to go straight next door and buy some more comics, or am I going to add this to my comic creating fund?
I mean, for a long time, around about that age, I think I was. So I think through my entire childhood, every Saturday was going next door to buy my weekly comic. It's just what that meant changed a bit through the years. First it was the Beano, then it was Transformers, then it was into Oink, the classic and sadly missed sort of British political / super gross and weird humour comic of the.
No, I can remember at a young age. I mean, it was a bit more up there, but I can remember sneaking off and getting my dad's Viz comics and the annuals at Christmas.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
I mean, there was some stuff in there that I knew I shouldn't be reading.
I know, it was so great though, right?
But it was great stuff, but I would recognise art styles. I was like, oh, that looks quite like some of the stuff that I've seen in Whizzer and Chips or in Beezer.
It was the same artist, right?
And I was like, oh, that's where I get it from.
I mean, who I mentioned.
That's it. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so, and then Oink didn't sadly last that long, but I think round about the time I stopped reading that, or it stopped publishing, was when I graduated up into 2000 AD, and that was me for a while then, you know. I was like, that'll keep you going for a while.
Of course, yeah. It's a great contrast of comics going from, you know, the Beano, Transformers, Oink, 2000 AD. Lots of different art variations as well. So I would love to be
but I think, you know, I was really lucky to be growing up at that time when sort of as you grow up and change, you know, and what you're interested in and what you respond to is changing. There was something there to sort of graduate onto or sort of move on to, you know. Like, I remember, like, because Transformers was such a huge formative thing for me, I assume I was reading it for like ages, for like my entire childhood. But I was, you know, in adulthood, I've looked at sort of, you know, the publication history, and I've looked which ones was actually. And it was like maybe like a year tops of my life that I was reading that thing, and then I was like on to something else because I'd outgrown such childish things as Transformers. Yeah,
never. How dare you say such blasphemy?
You know, age 11, I was like, oh, I think I'm a bit too mature for that sort of thing. There. Age 47, I'm like, Transformers rule.
It's full circle. Always come back to the robots. Always, every time. Not a bad way to be.
But I think it's harder that, you know, there were multiple titles around, and, you know, if you didn't quite respond to one, you might respond to another, and then as you got older, it would change. And it's harder, I think, for kids. That's what we need to make sure we're publishing stuff for kids as they sort of age out one thing, to find more comics and more graphic novels now that will speak to them and that they will respond to.
I mean, because it's cliche, but the children are the future. So if we want to continue to have comics in the future, sadly we do have to let the younger generation take the reins, and we want to guide them in the right direction. And that's something that you have done over the years. Is, you know, it's promoting, creating comics, creating writing and artwork. So why do you feel again that is so important to lead the way for the children of the future?
I mean, I think sort of like when I was a kid, and it was a very natural thing to read your comics and then have a go at drawing Optimus Prime, sort of while you waited for the next issue to come out. I think there is something very natural and sort of intrinsic to comics about, particularly for young readers, like reading it and like just going straight into having a go at drawing their own. And I think that is a wonderful and unique thing about comics, and to be encouraged and to be sort of really celebrated, you know, because you can't necessarily do that with every form of media or every form of art, you know, like it's with modern technology, it's easier and easier to make your own films, or sort of the barrier to entry is much lower, or to code your own video games or whatever, but those are still harder things to do than grab a sheet of paper and start drawing, you know, a robot on it, and then draw him farting, and then draw something else happening. You know, the comics are very easy to, there's very low barriers to entry with comics, to just having a go at it as an art form. And I think that's a really important thing, because you can learn so much by doing that. You know, it's such a great way of developing kids' literacy skills and their writing skills and their confidence and their creativity and their business sense if they get into then selling their comics. And, you know, there's their entrepreneurship potential. There's so many skills you learn through making comics, particularly for kids. But it doesn't feel like sort of, oh, I've got to go and practice my literacy skills or whatever. You know, you're just drawing awesome stuff and having fun. And so it's a sort of a secret weapon in that way.
Oh, I like that.
I think we should, we as a culture should celebrate more and make more of.
Get more comic creation in schools. Let's have that as a lesson. I'd go back to school for that, I think, as well.
Yeah, genuinely. You know, I do a lot of work in schools, and I know a lot of other creators who do a lot of work in schools. Some schools are really open to this stuff and see sort of the benefits it can bring. Some schools maybe still are a little bit sniffy about comics as it's not real reading or whatever, you know.
Oh yeah, I think I had that when I was in school. I wasn't a big reader in school. I am now. Can't step away from books, but I can remember going to the library, the classic safe space in school during those lunchtime hours sometimes.
Yeah.
And picking up a copy of The Hobbit, a book that I'd heard my dad talk about and other people, and it was the graphic novel version. And that was the first time I'd seen a graphic novel and
Yeah.
held it. I was like, wow. And I opened the pages and there was just amazing images that I could never imagine imagining. And
Right.
from that, definitely grew a greater love for how a comic could evolve into something else. So
That was maybe
glad
the first like actual graphic novel I think I've probably ever read as well. Yeah.
because it was
So
impressive just
beautiful,
to
wasn't it?
flick through the pages, and it was an absolute gorgeous piece. But now I'm seeing in schools and in libraries more options when it comes to reading. So there are more classic comics and graphic novels and
Yeah.
gateways, as it were, into something else. But it's definitely something that I love to see at a Comic-Con when there is a child or a young adult walking around Artist Alley looking at artwork. Sometimes they are on the exact same eye level as artwork being created in front of them, which is why I'm excited for you to interact with the guests at Portsmouth Comic Con. So, what are some of your favourite con memories that you've had from over the years, Neill?
Oh my goodness. I used to find sort of tabling at Comic Con sort of as a small press creator, it's quite stressful and difficult because it puts you into the sort of role of salesperson, which I think for many of us comics creators types who are maybe a bit introverted, maybe not naturally great at grabbing people and saying, hey, check out this, and doing the sales pitch, so I always found it a bit difficult, but I've had some lovely times and some lovely memories, and in recent years particularly, it's really because you sort of don't have to do that as much as when you like literally just when you're not self-publishing your work. When someone else is publishing your work, you don't have to be working hard to sell it like someone else's job, that you're just there to sort of come along and just have people tell you you're awesome, which is a very lovely way to spend a day.
It's a great way to have just the ego massage for 48 hours or so. But I think that's what one of the many advantages of England getting more Comic-Cons like Portsmouth Comic Con. It's been going now since 2018. And back then, I mean, I'm from Portsmouth. This is the greatest commute for me because it's literally 15 minutes down the road. And when I found out about this event, I was like, wow, good for Portsmouth. They've got the Victorious Music Festival that's been doing great stuff. It's a city of culture and entertainment. Comic-Cons was something that was missing. And then this came along and I was like, right, let's see how it goes. And over the years, it has evolved. They're trying new things. But the fact is, Artist Alley has always been there. And people are figuring out what a Comic-Con is now, not just what some of the big ones might become. But now there is such a huge emphasis on comics and creators and writers and getting kids into that world. It's a beautiful thing to see. So as you said, as a creator, sometimes you may be a bit introverted and not wanted to step out of that comfort zone and draw people in. But sometimes people will come to your booth. And I'm sure that, and that's it.
People love seeing people draw, for one thing, apart from anything else. That's actually, it turns out, a really fun thing that people enjoy watching. But yeah, I think everything you're saying sounds great. I think over the years of going to Comics Cons, I have found like some are like, this is maybe not a great place for me. Like some are not so focused on. A really good Comic Con is really focused to me on the comics.
Of course,
a comic convention
yes,
focused on comics, and that implies a certain amount of focus on the people who create those comics and being able to find comics you wouldn't have encountered before, meet the people who made them, hear what they have to say, see their work, sort of see the originals, that kind of thing, And to me, a great Comic Con does that while also trying to sort of outreach and get new people into comics. From my perspective, often that, young people, a sort of child-friendly space where they can have a fun day out and find cool stuff that they didn't know about before. That's the ideal. I have been to comics conventions in the past, and I'm not going to name any particularly, but that is not always the case. And they can be sometimes more focused on, just Funko Pops and getting a picture taken with someone who was in an episode of Doctor Who once, which is all great. And, I love, I don't love Funko Pops personally. That's not my particular thing. I love Doctor Who, and I would love to have my photo taken with people in it, I'll
just hide my top shelf of Funko Pops there behind me. That's fine.
I blocked several,
but no, I get it. Yeah, I get it. But
I was about to go into my anti-Funko Pops tirade. I saw like about 7 behind it. It was like, each to their own, that's fine. But like that, some so-called Comic Cons aren't actually very focused on comics at all, in my experience. And like, if you're there as an independent creator, particularly, just like, why am I even here? This is not what anyone else is here for. And yeah, it just feels like a bad fit. But it's really good ones. It's like, you do have that chance to connect with people.
Yeah, it's a very fine balance that some places can't seem to get quite right. I have been to some before where I've had to actually ask, do you know where I can go to find some comics? Like I'm there with my list of things that I'm trying to add to my collection,
Yeah.
and I can't find the traders. Where
You got any comics at this Comic Con?
you would hope so. I mean, I've seen 17 Funko booth desks, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's the comics there that I do love to see at Portsmouth Comic Con. After
I
Artist
think that
Alley,
like the term Comic Con has sort of come to mean something slightly different in the wider culture than maybe
Yes.
what we used to think it meant, or it just means a place that sort of celebrates certain types of culture. And yeah, I like one where the comics are a key part of it. That's all I'm saying.
which is great
for
because
both kinds of things, but my kind of thing is celebrating comics.
and that's it. And it's difficult to sort of not want to spend all weekend inside Artist Alley or where the comics are. But what I really love about this con is that I can go and find a comic that I will really grab my eye for £1, and then I will go over to see a comic book trader that's got some comics that are on my list, but I really don't have the budget for. But I can hold them.
It's nice
I can
to
have
look
that.
at them, though,
It's
right?
nice to look at them, and they do look so pretty when they're boarded and graded. But when I just sort of, it's a slab. But do I need another one? But it's fun that you can see all different sides of the world of comics.
I mean, I'm just looking at your background there. You apparently got an Action Comics #1 behind you, so
Now,
I don't know what else.
Now this will be coming along with me. Now, obviously, this isn't an original, of course, but
Disappointing.
I take this around to every con that I go to, and I try and find somebody that has written or drawn for Superman, and
Cool.
I try and it's a good icebreaker, if anything else.
Yeah.
And it's nice and light. I don't have to take it around too far, but it's become a prized possession. I can't fit a few more names on there, but we've got the wonderful likes of Tim Sale and George Perez, who are no longer with
Frank
us.
Quietly in a
Yes,
Chris
sir.
Weston.
Fun story. My first year at Portsmouth Comic Con, Frank was there, and I was just so amazed that for their first con in my hometown, Frank would turn up, and I was pretty much at his table all weekend.
That's a good get. Yeah.
asking him questions, getting him to sign stuff, and it was like, wow, this is so cool that you're, first of all, in Portsmouth. But they also had Louise and Walter Simonson. They had some really big names, and people were turning up with suitcases full of comics to sign because they weren't charging. And I was like, this could backfire. The organisers, being the organisers, fixed that situation, and it was so smooth. But to have
I'd
that,
rocked up with a suitcase full of every single issue of X Factor from my entire.
see, and that's it. And they would have signed them as well,
Yeah.
whilst having chats with you at the same time.
Man, that sounds amazing.
But for my first experience with the Comic-Con in my hometown, it was a really good starting point to see such an emphasis on the comics, first of all. But then after that, it was the family experience. It was getting people in, showing people to embrace passions, getting them involved, having art sessions with panels and interviews as well. So it's going to be a great weekend. I'm hoping you're going to be very busy, as always, with panels and talking with the public. What will you be bringing along to show off to the masses?
Well, I'll probably have some copies of Mega Robo Bros, my graphic novel series, for younger readers, as I say. And it's just recently finished, so it's 8 volumes, and the final one published just last week. I'll see how many of those I can carry.
Wonderful.
Nowadays, if I'm doing a comics, because you can buy my books in like regular bookshops, so it seems like sort of a slightly better each time to bring along something that you can't just buy in a regular book. So sort of I might have some sort of limited edition, more. I do still from time to time like self-publish something just because it's something that doesn't fit in the Phoenix, or sort of doesn't. I just want to try something weird, So I might bring along a couple of weird experimental comics that you can't buy in other places, just for funsies.
And that is always that's a fun part of it for sort of a comic collector. And I've tried slowing down over the years, but for me, getting the chance to get an original piece or a commission, I've run out of wall space. I can't fit much more stuff into frames, but that's always a fun part of it as well. And you come around and you can ask an artist for some of their best work or something that maybe they've not drawn before. So if somebody was to come and ask you for a commission and really throw you off, what would be a very weird commission for you to create?
Oh, well, I used to, a few years back, I did a story that ended up coming out as a book called Pirates of Pangaea, which was about pirates riding around on dinosaurs. And so then when I was going to cons for a few years after that, I would like have a sort of offer on my table. I will draw any character riding any dinosaur. Like name a character and name a dinosaur, and I will draw that for you. And I don't do that anymore.
No, I was making a list in my head for May. No,
I don't do that anymore, partly because it was really hard, actually.
Bet.
It was so fun, though. It was such a fun thing to do. And I drew so many fun, completely mad, character and dinosaur pairings. And it was a fun challenge because, you're used to drawing your own characters, but having to suddenly learn how to draw. I'd never drawn Wonder Woman before, and now I have to draw her riding a velociraptor. That's an artistic challenge for me.
I'm coming to your booth. I don't care. I'm going to bang on that table until I get what I want.
Well, also I did have a slight sort of I sort of stepped back from doing that, partly because I just don't do as many comics conventions these days. I tend to be more like children's book festivals, that kind of thing, where mostly kids want you to draw your characters that you wrote. And I felt, am I supposed to be drawing Wonder Woman? It's like, what right have I to draw Deadpool? Like, I didn't create Deadpool. Why am I drawing? I don't know. I felt I don't generally like the sort of industry turns a blind eye to artists drawing sketches of whatever they want, right? But I just personally was like, how do I feel about drawing Deadpool? Like a character I do not own or have any right to make money drawing,
Or how do I feel about my characters being not wanted drawn? It's you defending your honor, as it were. Your characters want to be drawn by you, not by somebody else. That is it.
Well, maybe there's that too. Anyway, so I don't tend to do those days, but maybe I'll bring it back for this one because I do miss drawing dinosaurs, and it is a fun challenge to have to figure out how to draw.
I think you might get a few fans wanting to draw dinosaurs because there is often quite a big Jurassic Park element to the con. I know that some of the organisers are big fans of Jurassic Park.
Coast?
It's part of it. It's part of it. You can nip over to the Isle of Wight. There's lots of Jurassic stuff over there as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's just Nick and Kurt, the organisers behind the event. They love Jurassic Park. So they're always trying to make something new of it. There's often Jurassic Park vehicles scattered around outside on the forecourt. There's a few Jurassic Park cosplayers as well. So, and again, as you said, you can't go wrong with a dinosaur. And, pirates riding dinosaurs, I don't think there's a better concept for that.
So it's a solid elevator pitch, right? Yeah.
It's not
bad. So maybe I'll bring on my sketchbook and do some dinosaurs when I'm in Portsmouth.
I'm happy about that. I'll make sure I nip down when you're not too busy. Say, please, just I won't even be specific of what character or what dinosaur. I will leave that down to your,
dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice, sir, as it were. I like that even more. Yeah, but it's going to be a fantastic weekend, and it's difficult, I know, for sometimes people that are attending a con to step off and away and walk around the event. But I encourage you to do so because as Comic-Cons go, it's such an absolutely charming and refreshing event to see so many families and people walking around and enjoying comics and perhaps sometimes even getting into comics for the first time. It's their first experience, which is so magical.
So I'll try and let my publishers give me a stack of Phoenixes I can bring along there. Give away some free Phoenixes because that's always nice.
Magic words now. I shall make sure that people get to your booth and say, look, come and have a look at the dinosaurs. Come and have a look at the donuts. Come and have a look at these magical robots as well. It's all stuff that, to me, is so incredibly visual and exciting.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's what an eye would be drawn towards that as well. So, a question that I would say, you're clearly quite a visual guy, a visual creator. Do you have very vivid dreams?
That's an interesting question I've never been asked before. Yeah, sometimes. On the rare occasions I remember them, they can be very often in really bad ways.
Okay.
Like if I'm having a stressy dream, it can be very, very intense and sort of a well-realized world,
That's the thing. Being a creator, especially sort of an artist and comic creator like that, I mean, I know your brains are always on. There's rarely a time when you've either not got a pen in your hand or you've got an idea that you have to get out and put on paper before you forget about it. So, yeah, it's a fascinating mind to be in. I'd like to sort of get into the minds of creators and find out how they come up with these ideas. So, especially Donut Squad. Where did that idea come?
I see now with the book coming out, and I'm starting to do promotion for it and stuff. I feel like that's a question I'm going to get asked, and I just don't have a good answer to it. I was just sitting in the garden one day, and I just thought of a bunch of donuts saying dumb stuff, and sort of made myself laugh. And
that's enough.
Yeah,
that's enough. It made you laugh. That's enough it takes. Because now every time you see a donut, you'll think of the same thing.
There wasn't any particular character or anything. It was just like the idea of it's going to be a strip, and it's like, I don't know, like the Mr. Men or the Munch Bunch or something, but they're all donuts, and it's just incredibly stupid. And I just literally just made myself laugh at the sort of presenting a thing as if it's serious, but it's absolute nonsense, and it's just donuts being. As I say, I need a better answer to this question, but I just made myself laugh.
It made you laugh, and with that you think, well, if it makes me laugh, it's probably going to make somebody else laugh that is on my wavelength, and that's the people that you want to entertain. It's like going back to those early days of you sending out the copies of your comics to people that wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Not much has changed in that element. You're still showing off your wares to people that are keen to find out more.
It's all ultimately a way to try and, communicate with people and be on the same wavelength. You put things out and that you find funny and you hope other people will laugh too. That's ultimately the goal, isn't it?
I'm looking forward to sort of getting some of the Donut Squad, finding out some more about these dinosaurs, and just seeing you in your element talking to the public. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. And it's Portsmouth, so I'm very passionate about it because it's my hometown. We've got a lot going for us now when it comes to Comic Cons, because more and more local areas are getting them. More and more towns and cities are maybe once or twice a year putting on a Comic Con. And if more events take a look at what Portsmouth is doing, comics over the next 20, 30, 50 years are going to be amazing. There's so much love for comics these days that I don't believe that hero fatigue, as they seem to say, is a thing. It might be in the movies, but I'm loving the way that comics are being represented right now. What are some of your favourite comics that you've read over the years that aren't your own?
Oh, well, I mean, not to... It makes it sound like I haven't grown up at all since I was, 7, but like my favourite comic at the moment is, again, Transformers. The Daniel Warren Johnson Transformers series is just extraordinary. I mean, he doesn't draw it anymore, but it's still pretty incredible. I don't know the name of the artist, Jorge Corona, something like that. It's a beautiful and stunning and such a great sort of just action comic, It's a really sort of visceral and exciting and sort of shows how much fun you can have with this stuff. So that's a recent favourite. I mean, for a long time. So once I not left 2000 AD behind, but once I discovered American comics as a teenager, I went pretty all in on X-Men for a long time. X-Men was 100% my thing. Coming in at the sort of the very tail end of Chris Claremont's run on X-Men, but rather than then sticking with X-Men, going back and reading all of Chris Claremont's X-Men, that's and that is still a favourite and still a go-to, and still I think I will go back to over and over again. And particularly the comic Excalibur, which was written by Chris Claremont and drawn by Alan Davis. I think somehow because it was set in Britain and I knew it was a British artist, and it just felt like it sort of connected these worlds of like far off, amazing, very American feeling superhero comics, but with a very sort of down to earth, grounded. Oh, this feels like it could be happening at the end of my road sort of vibe, which really, really connected with me as a young person. And also Alan Davis is just the most talented artist to ever hold a pen and just could draw everything and anything in such a charming and fluid and such a brilliant storyteller. So that left a really big impression for a long time.
Hopefully, good. Hopefully, when you come down and you get some time away from your booth, you can go off and maybe find some comics, because I know that I'm now wanting to find out more about this Transformers in England. That's really sort of just left a little dip in my brain that I need to fill up with as much information and content as I can. I mean, all the Marvel UK Transformers stories are fantastic. They ended up being written for a long time by a writer called Simon Furman, who just told these incredible, just epic, emotional stories about robots turning into cars and fighting each other. But it was played so straight and had so much sort of genuine, like, everyone involved was working so much harder than it sort of anyone asked them to, you know what I mean? Like, it's a toy tie-in comic for children, but they completely gave it 100% and were just making the best comic possible. So all of those are fantastic. Lots of great artists on those. But that very first story, I think it's called Man of Iron. Man of Iron.
And it is a really weird and unique, in hindsight, it's a really weird and unique sort of bit of storytelling. And I definitely recommend seeking that out if you...
Right.
if you find yourself at a comics convention, it's fantastic.
And that's it. Perfect plug for the event. And that's it. You can find something there that will either trigger something that is part of your history, your legacy, as it were, or you can find something new, something mainstream, something that's completely independent. And that's what I say, the amount of talent that is in Artist Alley at Portsmouth Comic Con with the private vendors it's a brilliant thing to see. And that's why, I think I will be spending most of my time there. I'll be coming down and seeing you, Neill, and I'll let you do that again, that dealer's choice when it comes to dinosaurs. And I can't wait to see more from the Donut Squad and everything else that you bring along. Where can people find you online, sir?
So my website is just neillcameron.com. Neill Cameron is 2 L's in Neill. That's one thing I should point out.
It is 2 L's.
Neill Cameron on Blue Sky and on Instagram, and I think that's about it these days, because I keep quitting social media platforms when they get taken over by fascists.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation right now, to say the least, of where you can go and where you can't. But as long as you're finding your audience, whether that be online or in real life, as they say,
exactly.
I know that people are going to come and see your work and just be, I think, more affected by your passion than your artwork. But they both go hand in hand. But speaking with you today, just in this short amount of time, it has made me want to make sure that I come and visit you and speak more about why comics mean so much, because it was absolutely wonderful chat.
Talk about it all day, honestly. This was a pleasure.
Wonderful stuff. Neill, take care. I will see you soon on the 3rd and 4th of May at Portsmouth Comic Con, sir.
Awesome. See you then.